So I love toki pona. The language has changed the way I think, and I will use it to help clarify my thought. And a while back, I was sketching out ideas for a hypothetical society and more like a metaphysical system, which based on toki pona, as well as my own metaphysical worldview. So this is a nasin toki pona. It's not even I don't even right now use toki pona this way or as if it implied this system, but it's sort of, there's elements of Christian thought, more like Eastern Orthodox, mystical Christian thought, and then some other elements just sort of thrown in there. Caveat, I'm not saying this is how toki pona was intended to be used or should be or needs to be, or that it's an inherent feature. Just when I combine sort of my ideas with toki pona, this is the type of thing that emerges, and it gave me some interesting categories for framing the world. So I was thinking, toki pona, it's a very simple language. A lot of it relies on, you end up using a lot of nonverbal communication, and so this society that would use it would probably value silence, value a wider sense of language, and not just words. And what words there are would be very powerful, and I was thinking of, so the central concept in the system is the concept of mama, which is, it means parent in toki pona, and that is the fruitful, but also connected in this system with the idea of silence. So mama would be the fruitful silence, whence proceeds everything. Everything comes out of this silence. That's also full of the potential for all kinds of speech. So it's feminine patterns. This corresponds kind of to the concept of the Theotokos, the divine feminine, Prakriti, I believe, in Hinduism, possibly. Or the father as creator in Christian thought. So we are all embraced within the cosmos, and the cosmos is embraced within, contained within, and sort of emerges out of and back into this silence that is fuller than speech. Also the idea of the divine darkness in Christian mysticism. But that's mama. And the cosmos would be considered the child and offspring of mama, corresponding to, in Christianity, Christ, considered as the universal, cosmic, or Sophia, or actually both. Syllables should be sacred in some way. I don't know enough about traditional metaphysical systems to know how this would work, but there should be something with the syllables. And then each word would be have some sort of sacred resonance as well, and essentially be or embody a name. A logos, an angel, spirit, God, or an aspect of the divinity / an element of the world. Those kinds of categories, that would be each word in toki pona. There's so few words. You basically have a whole little pantheon slash higher, there would be several hierarchies of progression of these elements in the matter of family trees of the gods, in the manner of like an evolutionary tree of progression and development, in the manner of like the progression of the elements and interrelationship of these. I think there would be several of these hierarchies. I can't imagine toki pona society being too rigid. I think things would be allowed to be fairly loose and just interact with each other in different hierarchies. And maybe that every one of these words, nimi, would be its own nasin, like path, subset of the way of life of these people, and they all, perhaps certain people are devoted to one or the other, but they all fit together. If we say that this society believes that humans are, in Christian terms, the image of God, or like sort of the center of the cosmos, and the central being that like sort of holds everything together, which I don't think everybody accepts that. And I think about animals a lot these days, and I think about like trees a lot and such these days. I'm like, what about them? I have to look into this. But anyway, assuming that basically Yan humans would contain all of the words / the spirits. It's just, in toki pona you can collapse a lot of concepts into just one concept, and that's what I'm doing here. Anyway, and a human could be named by all the names, like we embody all of these patterns of like the things that plants do, or like fish, or like the center, a center. Each individual also is and has their own nimi and their own name, and that's sort of the unique individuality of the individual. And I guess you could say each individual being at all, not just humans. But then also the silence that of mama is also at the most innermost heart of each being, as well as being around everything. So it's this mirroring thing of the most inner is also the highest and most outer. I was thinking of playing with duality and opposition in this system, where like a thing is, or a word or thing is defined by sort of everything that it is not. I don't know. I had that written down. But also opposites are unified. I don't know. Anyway. And then I was thinking about how would this system deal with evil or mistakes, or what in Christianity corresponds to sin, which I think the traditional Christian system is troubling in the way that it handles it. So I was thinking it would be, so ike is the word in toki pona for bad, ike, pakala, those things would in this system be considered nasa, in a gentler way, just things that are not properly named, and they're not harmonious in function. Like if you try to mokue kiwen, or like try to eat a rock, you're basically categorizing that kiwen in a way that is just not, it doesn't fit, it doesn't work. And like that's, instead of it being this awful and horrible thing, it's more just treated as like foolishness, ignorance, sort of like a child. And the more that you have the words, the nimi, again, / divinities, / angels, / spirits, singing inside of you, then you are wise and you can harmonize. You can properly name the cosmos in a way that keeps it holding together and working. Not in a strict category way, because toki pona is really built on things being named and categorized contextually in just the way that works in the situation. So it's like an internal wisdom and fluid way of, there's no hard rules, but you have to become wise and internalize so that you can just look in the moment and know how to, pona is, of course, an important word. Alili pona, or pona e ali. So maybe like children tend to be confused and they have to learn the right nimi. If you give the wrong name to something, that can break and hurt things. So it's valued to be silent and listen, thus to imitate mama, to imitate the most powerful potential in silence, whence springs everything. So this is not like a belittling thing to be silent and listen, but it's like almost the most powerful that you can do. And when you speak something that is like powerful in that you're acting on the world, but it's also a specification of you, so you be careful, like when you do that, it's good if you do that with intention. You know what you're doing. Anyway, so like silence and stillness is valued and considered. A sign of wisdom. Toki liken kepeken cielo, liken kepeken uta, toki uta liwawa, liken pona, liken pakala. Yeah, so this is sort of tying into a lot of what's in Proverbs about the power of words and the importance of the heart, and then the like power of being silent in the right situations and knowing when to be silent and knowing when to speak. And life and death are in the power of the tongue. Like, words are so powerful for good and evil. I think this system recognizes the spiritual and world-shaping power of language, and also language and communication as a wider thing that really all of the cosmos is. Words are like a concentrated version of that, but obviously we talk, we communicate, toki, with our bodies, with the objects around us, with the way that we are living, as well as with words. Maybe a concept of balancing the different nimi, sort of like the idea of balancing the humors or like the forces in the body. And maybe, I don't know too much about, what is it, chakra, and also how do you say, what's that word for like the energy in the body and balancing that. Again, I'm ignorant in that area, but it's a thing, I know it's a thing, and I guess it would correspond in the system to balancing the different nimi that are sort of always flowing through us. Death. Assuming, and I don't even know what my view on this is, but assuming the resurrection of the body, death would be considered going back to mama. So their like silent self and most internal self, which remember is already the core of a person, is that eternally fruitful silence. It's still there, just withdrawn from the toki, from the cosmos, from the words. And now, like, this spirit, or this person is very wise and, like, can see everything and is integrated more with the universe. And they're working with the whole cosmos to, like, continue the work of humanity in sub-creating or creating and, like, ruling and ordering things. What you miss of this person is found in mama. But in time, in the day and in the next age, however that would be said, in like the spring suli, mama will give back everything that's been lost in the loss of like the body of the person, as mama gives back the sun and the warmth and the plants. Alili kamasin, yan kinli kamasin, kon yan, cielo yan. Everything that is lost will come back. So what is dead is still there invisibly in the silence, in Mama, and will also be expressed again and come back as the cycles of nature in general, as an extension of that idea. So within the system, silence, emptiness is sacred and expresses this idea of Mama and of like the fruitful silence. So for instance, space within a house, the empty space within the house, silence between words, night and sleep, contemplation or meditation, the internal silence and solitude of suffering and great pain, and perhaps in old age people would become wise and revert more to Mama, to being more inside themselves, thinking more and speaking less and more succinctly with power. I think it would be mostly an oral society, writing being more for ritual purposes. I imagine these people would live in fairly small communities where you know everybody around you, and like some sort of jungle-ish kind of place. Art is also nimi. So, because in Toki Pona the writing systems are pictorial and it interacts with drawing. It's like the same thing. They're not so separated as they are with our system. So, like, kasi means plant, Toki Pona. Any drawing of a plant is also kasi. There's sort of norms based around the Sitla and the Sitla and Pona, but it's like loose. And the style of Sitla and Pona, the writing system, is also the norms for like sacred art of this society. Like, a real plant is kasi, drawing of a plant is kasi, the Sitla and kasi is kasi, and these are sort of on a continuum of kasi. I was trying to think about how they would do music. I guess they would, I was thinking pentatonic scale, because the number 5, the numbers would be, right, 1, 2, and 5. 1, 2, Luca. I don't know enough about mathematics to know how that would play out in like mathematical systems or like the sacred geometry, but it would be around those numbers, 1, 2, and 5. So pentatonic scale. Sound, kalama means both sound and music in Toki Pona, and so any sound, I guess, would be considered music on the same continuum as music. The more that you nasin and organize and order that sound, the more what we think of as music it would become, but it's all on the same scale. Alili, kalama alini, vi kalama no same. And they would perhaps have songs for each word. Basic shapes, I guess. Linea, so a line. CK, circle, leko, square. Although I have heard people using leko also for any polygon, and I guess I like that. I don't know geometry. You have to be able to develop this as it would develop. I was thinking of prayers. The very simple form would be just every word, nimi, and then o. As an invocation, like every word that is spoken would invoke and embody Mama in some sort of specification. So all language is a sort of prayer and invocation, but the for like kasi o, kala o would sort of invoke that totality of that spirit and category. Laws or basic guidelines for life. I don't think this would be a very rigid, society with tons of rules, but that would just be the reverse of that. O, nimi, and each of those would have their sort of meanings, like o pona, o toki, and apply in different situations. And these maybe are sort of proverbs or maxims that parents will repeat to their children, and they get tossed around. Literature. Nimili sama kasi, like I think of it like a tree. A way that it could be structured, I guess, is that the trunk would be the elemental sentences, because there are so few words that you can really make almost every sentence like x li pona, x li y. Of these elemental sentences, certain of those are particularly strong and get repeated and sort of elaborated on. There would be mythology as well. I'm just trying to think of very simple, and then going from there. So like kala li pona, kasi li pona, yan li pona. All of the possible variations, and certain of these are more central and more important. Human names. So each individual's esoteric identity is that like silent mystery mama at their heart, which is expressed in their whole self. So me, mama, me, yan. And the like more exoteric, invisible identity would be fluid, like not as specifically tied to always calling one person by one name. Because toki pona is very fluid like that. Like if your kid was swimming and you wanted to call them, you could call them kala or kama. You'd like call them basically the same word for fish, because they're being kala, they're like swimming and they're essentially fishing at the moment. Therefore, they are that category. Children would maybe be nicknamed loosely, and their nimi and name would emerge. In different contexts, they might be called differently, so sort of evolving names that are given, chosen, can be earned, emerging just from the child's life. Time conceptualized as CK and linya. Thinking of growth of humans as like a baby is wordless, right? Then since silence is sacred, that's like considered, also there's reverence to that, because they're almost the most mama at that time by being without words and just absorbing everything. In youth, you learn all the words, and then in old age, coming back more to like the mama and being more silent and contemplative. The stages of life could be divided perhaps into like tempo kalama, where the child is with their parent and can make tones and then syllables. Tempo nimi, pointing, naming, learning the words. Tempo o, asking questions, answering questions. The child learns the litany of kind of the o, X name. So like, o kasi, o kalao, and sort of learns the categories of their world. Tempo toki, being a youth, being an adult, freely communicating and using all the words. And then going into old age, tempo mama, speaking less, more succinctly and powerfully. But a person's toki or self-expression is expressed not only in their words, but also in their body, in their way of life, in their work, and art, in their children and family. I think that's all part of your toki sina. Thinking also about societal roles, or like family structure. I think everybody would be considered one family in the sense of the deep affection and connection between everybody, and different nasin, or ways, like nasin olin, basically. The ways that your love and your energy is attached and concentrated within the group differ depending on who you are. So this is the same as like your gender identity and sexuality. That would be in our terms, would be that. Also like vocation and calling in a religious sense in those two. Yeah. Because all of that, I think, is about where are you putting your your love and like yourself and your attachments. So nasin one, so some possible categories or ways of like splitting it up to embrace the widest possible range of human possibilities. Nasin one would be they're olini mamali, esoteric, in their own silence, in their own center of themselves and in their spirit, expressed just in their body. So these would be like the monks or ascetics or type role, where these people, they are their own sufficient and fruitful center. They live more in esoteric contemplation and sort of equally play different roles to different people. And these people wouldn't really, they're sort of like gender neutral or really express all, like synthesizing the, and they do not, they're like monks in that being devoted to mama, to contemplation, and not to like getting married, or they don't, they're like asexual essentially. Nasin two being, you could see it as a hierarchy, not in the sense of that the top is necessarily the best, but just it's the most central or like pure. Nasin one, nasin two, nasin mute. So nasin two would be just like marriage basically. You're attached to another person in like a committed way, or like a permanent and essential way, and you two are really one unit. Yanolin, for you, that one person is li Yanolin sina li cielo mama, that instead of your own center being the purest expression of mama, that is centered in your Yanolin. So you see them as the center, like the cosmos sort of concentrating and flowing back out. So that would be nasin two. And there's nasin mute, which is also the mirror image of nasin one, but these people would be more, in modern terms, like polyamorous, gender fluid, like forming no essentially, basically that. Just like loving everybody, but instead of in the like contemplative way, in more of an external way, an embodied way. The Yan one and Yan mute, or nasin one, nasin mute, would sort of mirror each other. Like white light and like the complete rainbow, and then nasin two are like the, which I guess would be the most of the people in the society, because generally people are gonna find a, like that's, I don't know, that's a normal way that's a typical statistical way of humans to attach, but yeah, would be like your marriage. But all of the three in the society would have their own role and like are all valid and fit into the system. This I want to play around with more because I like this way of looking at the world. There's, I think it's quite beautiful in some ways and simple. Nasinili Ponatami. Yeah, fun to play with.